Hi everyone, Kareen Erbe here with Broken Ground. I'm here in my food forest and I feel a little bit of spaciousness now after a really busy fall. And I wanted to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about social systems design and the fact that you cannot do it all. And if you shouldn't feel like a failure if you cannot do it all. And I talk about this a lot in my Resilient Homestead program. I talk about this with clients and remind them, and with my students, that agriculture was never meant to be a solitary act. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I say this quite often. And I say it quite often because people need reminders. Agriculture was typically done in community in the past, right? Historically. So you think Amish communities, you think indigenous peoples, everything was done communally. And so when we start to engage in this work, when many of us are relearning how to be agricultural workers and maybe have some background and experience in it, maybe we don't, right? It's really important for us to understand that we were never meant to do this alone. It was also never meant to just be a nuclear family endeavor. And so if you want to grow food, you need to shore up an ecosystem of support. So in my Resilient Homestead program, I talk about my roadmap of resilience, which the acronym is CODE. So clarify your goals, observe yourself and your site, design on paper, and then execute, enhance your skills, evaluate. And the other E is ecosystem of support. So what do I mean by that? I mean, first of all, on an inner resilience level, I want people to really think through what or who do you lean on for extra support. So just like right now, we're sitting in an ecosystem that I've designed, right, that has fruit trees, that has soil building species, that has ground covers, that has a whole, I've created a mini ecosystem that supports itself to the point where, for the most part, fruit trees and berry bushes and a lot of the perennials here are quite healthy, right? And they don't need a lot of my inputs. But we need to design a similar system for ourselves. And it's funny that Benny just came along right now because Benny is part of my ecosystem of support. So who or what in your life gives you support? Whether that might be a spouse, whether it might be friends, whether it might be animals, whether it might be a walk in a hike, right, in the mountains or in the wilderness, whether it's going dancing, whether it's coffee with friends, right? All of those things are critical to us as human beings, and knowing what is really important to you and what gives you that inner resilience is critical to identify, especially when you engage in this work. So that's one first thing that I would recommend, is that kind of map out, like you would a design of a food forest, who are the shrubs in your life? Who's the ground cover? Who's the mycelial network? Who are the canopy, right? And they could be beings, they could be non-human species, they could be simply spending time alone, reading a book, right? They could be acts and behaviors. So that's one first thing that I encourage my students, my clients to identify. The second thing is to do things in community so that you can create generative work. So one of the critical things that we want to do, and what I like to talk about, is reweaving food back into culture and culture back into food. And one of the ways to do that is to hold work parties, right? If there's a big food forest installation that you have to do on your site, bring friends along. I think people, whether they know it or not, are craving some kind of connection to the natural world, to the earth, to planting, to growing. So having work parties is something that I recommend. making partnerships. So I partner with herbalists in town who, instead of me making the elderberry syrup, they make the elderberry syrup. I get to support them in their business. They gift me back some elderberry syrup, and it's a win-win situation, right? Another example would be having, if you had a work party, right, having like a weeding and wine work party, right, a dinner party. I often like to use this example that if you had 5 girlfriends over and they helped you weed for an hour and a half and you cooked them an amazing meal, right, that's 9 hours of weeding that you would never do that all in a row yourself, right? And that's way more generative. You get to connect, you get to visit with your girlfriends, you get to cook an amazing meal and everyone feels nourished by it. And you get that work done, right? So that's what I mean by generative work, that there's way more that can come out, that can cascade out of building community through agriculture than just the food itself, right? There are many more yields that you can create. So again, shoring up your inner ecosystem of support, or your ecosystem of support, creating and doing things in community to create more generative work, and then obviously also shoring up the non-human ecosystem around you, right? So planting more habitat, planting more native plants, introducing more living microorganisms into your soil, right? All of those things also help in the work that we're doing, help in creating these ecosystems. So those are some of my thoughts. I'd love to hear from you what you think, and what you may do to support yourself when you do this work. But I really want to underline that it's critical that people not feel like failures because they can't do it all. In this individualistic society, I feel like we need to remind people to do more things in community. So invite your friends, invite your family, and make it more of a communal effort. All right. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon. Bye.